social pain, actually is what motivates people to go and do these horrible things. So we've used science to look back into something that an ancient religious person 1,500 years ago said is good for your soul. So St. Gregory the Great was interested in making sure you go into the heaven that I don't believe in, rather than down to the hell that I don't believe in. But I would argue that he had something to say in pointing at those 7 things in terms of it being good for culture, good for society, good for us all while we're alive, and forget the afterlife. Now, there was another situation, another person, a notable religious person who spoke long before him about greed. St. Paul felt that greed was the root of all sin, the root of all evil. What do you think? Is pride the root of all evil? Or is greed the root of all evil? Well, believe it or not, there's lots of neuroscience which looks into the question of greed. And what's interesting about that particular body of research is that we are, at our root, if given no time to think about that financial transaction, we are all naturally very generous. That desire to be greedy, to take more than your fair share, is actually something that is learned. Psychological studies investigating this have discovered that if you have a formal education in economics, you are likely to be more greedy than those people who do not. If you are born into a higher socioeconomic demographic, you are more likely to have learned socially, culturally, that you are better than others and therefore deserve more of everything. You're more likely to screw other people over in order to get more than your fair share, because you know through generations and generations, if you're from the wealthy, many generations of wealth, that you have the money to protect yourselves from the social and legal repercussions of getting caught taking more than your fair share. So the studies that demonstrated that deep down we're actually quite generous were twofold. One of them involved getting people, it was published in a really good journal, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, in case you want to look it up. And this guy, David Rand, got people to make economic decisions whereby if you take more for yourself, it means someone else is left with less. And they got people to do it under various time constraints. If they were given plenty of time to deliberate, then they convinced themselves of an argument for why it's fine for them to take an unfair portion of the proceeds. But if they were pushed for time and they had to make it instinctively, bang, they'd be more generous. They would offer a more equitable split of proceeds. The other aspect was a study where they looked at dispositional greed. So whether people are greedy over long periods of time, they just have a general predilection towards greedy behavior. And this one looked at this one was particularly amazing because they used TMS to switch off a certain part of their brain that they thought was responsible for that intervention that makes us go for the thing that's greedy and self-serving rather than doing what's right for the others. And indeed, when they zapped the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, at the moment they were making this decision, the people were more generous in their offering of the split. So, greed is in the brain. Greed is natural, but greed has to be balanced, because if you take more than your fair share over and over again, eventually at some point, collaborators will get tired of you and kick you out into isolation. So there's a cultural problem with regard to greed, because a lot of people's purpose in life, if like me, they found more interest in the pages of science than in the pages of religion, they're left with little else to aim for in life. So they aim for, they look around, what's everyone going for? We very much judge how good our behavior is on the basis of the people around us. And because there's so much example of people chasing the big car, the big house, the flash holidays, we reason, quite understandably, well, the pursuit of wealth. That seems fair enough. You could say that Bill Gates is the greediest man on the planet, or you could say he's just the best business person. And there's that sort of grey area where you can't work out whether it's a vice or whether it's actually a virtue. And what I'm really keen to do is to impress upon you lovely people that when you come down here and you hear people talking about their various religions, don't think that there isn't some truth in some of the words, maybe not all, but some of the words they utter, there is ancient wisdom contained within the books of religion. I'm not saying that science can replace it. I'm saying let us avail ourselves of the wisdom in those ancient religious texts, and let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Then let's look at what neuroscience says about how different types of behavior improve our physical health, improve our mental health. Let's look at what neuroscience has to say about where in the brains these instincts come from. Each one of you has one of these in your noggin, believe it or not.